Hey everyone, and welcome to the People's Health Alliance, for the people, by the people, empowering people over their own health and well-being. My name's Shirley Blanch. I'm a mindfulness coach and meditation teacher. And today I'm really excited to introduce to you Karen Petersen. She's an author of the book Coming Out, Coming Home. And it was the story of a pastor's wife who fell in love with a woman, which is just such a fantastic story. And I thought it would be really great for Karen to be here to tell her story, to inspire anybody else out there who might be feeling like they're in the same situation, really. Karen, welcome to the People's Health Alliance.
Thanks so much, Shirley. It's really a joy to be here.
We've spoken before, and I really love your story. And I thought it would be great for you to share it with members of the PHA and people that tune into this, because it really is. It's quite an unusual story to be somebody that was so involved, I guess, in the church, in something that was so sort of mainstream as that, to then falling in love with a woman and then setting up a whole new life for yourself, which you're going to be talking to us a bit about today. So take us back to that time when you were still a pastor's wife at that moment, and you were living that lifestyle. You were married, you've got two daughters, haven't you, if I remember correctly?
That's right, yes.
And I would imagine in quite a close-knit community. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, it was. It was a small town along the coast in South Africa, coastal town. I can't remember numbers-wise how many people there were, but if we went to the supermarket, we were bound to bump into at least 5 or 10 people that we knew. So it was a small community, yes. And I came from a big city, from Johannesburg, and we then, my ex-husband and myself and our two girls, we relocated to the small coastal town, and basically to start a church. We used to call it a church plant. And it was a great time. Both my ex and myself are great starters of things. And he came from a business background. I came from a non-profit background, but always been excited to start new things. And so it was a very exciting time. But I think we went into it very naively. Although we had been leaders in a big church in Johannesburg, part of a leadership team, we hadn't thought about the repercussions of small town living and uh, of actually leading this church. And I learned very quickly that it just consumed our lives completely. We had no private lives at all anymore, and we grew it to a an average size for a small town. It was a church of about 150 people, and it was just so much work. It really was, and I realized quite quickly that it was making me lose who I was. Um, I was never the typical pastor's wife. I think I've always been a rebel at heart, and and I really battled to fit into that role, and more so in a small community. When we were in Johannesburg, the churches were just a lot more um, accepting of different types of people, and it wasn't so much a role that you had to slot into. You could be yourself more. But in the small town setting, people had very rigid views of what a pastor's wife should be. And I very quickly found myself in a position where I no longer knew who I was. And after about 4 years of that, I remember being in the supermarket, seeing somebody and running and hiding. I just didn't want to face them, So I just came to the place where I completely lost who I was. Our marriage took huge strain as well. My ex husband also, um, it wasn't really who he was. He was a businessman, and uh, yeah, both of us were really both struggling with our own issues and not really coming together with them, but rather moving apart with them.
That's such an interesting point that you make, because I also think that's something that a lot of women feel particularly at some point in their lives, and probably men as well. But a lot of women that I speak to get to a certain point in their lives where they feel like they've lost their identity. And not even so much through moving or taking on all the responsibility that you'd taken on there, but just through being a mother and being a wife and not really remembering who you were before you were those things and losing connection with that.
No, absolutely. I think that society really does tell us who we should be. And I think today, I mean, this is a good, well, 15 years later. Today, perhaps it's a little easier, I'm not sure. But back in those days, we had such specified roles, particularly in a marriage. And yeah, there wasn't the fluidity that there is today. There wasn't, um, I think younger women today just have a better understanding of themselves. And I hope that this is a general case, but it's just what I've observed. But back then, yeah, I I did what society told me to do, but like I said, there was that rebel inside fighting all the time, and I think that's what caused the dichotomy in me.
I get that rebel vibe. I have that myself. Um, what I think is really interesting there is you've spoken a lot about how you were feeling at that time, and none of it was really about your sexuality. It was just all about how this big change in your lifestyle was affecting you far more. How long had you been married at that point? What sort of, how old were your kids as well?
My kids were in high school, so they were nearing the end of their school career. In fact, when everything happened, they had both finished school already. They were studying outside of school and doing jobs already. So we'd been married for, it was close on 24 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, my ex husband, he's a great guy. He had since remarried and he's had another daughter.
Wow.
So he's got on with his life, and we're not best buddies, but we chat often, especially about our own daughters. Um, so at least, yeah, happy ending for him as well. But um, I've lost my train of thought. Where
That's
were we?
okay. So you'd been together for quite a long time.
Yes.
That's the interesting thing. You'd obviously got this sort of solid basis to your marriage. Had you been somebody that had ever questioned before whether you were straight or gay, or had it ever sort of crossed your mind before? Because I think a lot of people would think, well, that's a long time to be living a lie. Did you feel like you were living a lie all the way through that relationship?
Not at all. In fact, it was this move and the sudden dramas that we found ourselves in that got me starting to look at myself and my own desires and needs. So, in retrospect, I think I was pretty pretty ignorant because everything really pointed to me being gay. But
Okay.
I just grew up as, we used to say, oh, she's a real tomboy.
Yeah.
And that's how I grew up. I used to like dressing more like masculine than feminine. I used to do all the things the boys did because it was more fun, and but I always had friends of both genders. And I never ever saw it as a sexualized thing. It was just what I preferred. And I've always, thought that women are beautiful and are special, and I love the company of women. But I'd never romanticized it, or thought of it as being gay. I just actually assumed most women were like that. And it was only when I started examining myself and what did I really want, I realized that my marriage was not what I wanted. Um, and it was that Katy Perry song that actually got me going. I kissed a girl and I liked it. And I remember,
Really?
yeah, I remember the song came out, and at that stage, we weren't managing to live off what the church was bringing in, and so I got another job. And I remember talking to some younger woman, and they were the song came on, and I was like, "Have you ever kissed a girl?" And both of them had, and I was
Wow.
absolutely gobsmacked. And did you like it? And they said, "Yeah, well, it was fine, but it's not really our thing." And that got me thinking, and I thought, I wonder what it is like to kiss a woman. And the more I thought about it, the more I actually wanted to follow up on that. You
Wow.
know, and then I just happened to meet Tracy, and through that meeting, I guess everything was ready at that stage. I was unhappy in my marriage. Uh, I, I was definitely curious, and now I met a woman who I just really clicked with, and then I discovered that she had also been married to a man, but was now seeing women. So it was just
Wow.
like, wow, yeah. And I mean, we got married and we're still together today. It's
So
like
how long ago was that when you first met
that was
Tracy?
about yeah, that was about 15 years ago.
Wow.
So we've now been married for 7 years. Oh, 9 years. I lied, 9 years. So
What I really love about that is it almost sounds like everything fell into place at once. Like one thing led to another, and it was an awakening within you that almost led you to the person you were meant to be with.
that's very true. Yeah. I've never thought of it like that, but that's very true. Yeah.
Because if you hadn't
I,
made that move, if you hadn't been under that pressure, if you hadn't started uh, that pressure, it's interesting, isn't it? Because people seem to um, have these moments of awakening when they feel that they're at their lowest point, and
that
you
is true.
sometimes, like, everybody thinks, oh, I never want bad things to happen to me and I never want to struggle, but actually when you talk to people a lot of the time, the struggles are what lead to them awakening and completely changing their lives. So if you hadn't
Uh,
had that, you might, things might have just been okay enough for you to
No,
carry on.
that's very true. It is very true. I don't know if I would have left my husband if I hadn't gone through all of that. Um, and my only regret was the way I left him, because I basically had an affair. But it was 1 month, and then it all blew up. um, Best and worst day of my life. Best day because I could let go of all that baggage of everything that I was carrying. Worst day because it's just horrible to hurt somebody so badly.
Yeah, I can understand that. So at that time, so how did you meet Tracy, just out of interest? What happened? Do you remember? You must remember that moment that you first met her.
Yeah, we met through a mutual friend. She's a golfer. She's a very good golfer, and to. I was trying to play golf, and I was wanting to get some lessons. And a mutual friend uh, suggested Tracy, and that's how we met. Yeah, and we
And
just clicked. We clicked immediately.
did you just feel that immediately? Was it like,
Yeah, it was, first of all, just like really easy to chat and everything. But then I just felt this excitement in me. And, when you meet somebody that you're attracted to, all that excitement. And then it probably wouldn't have gone further, but then she shared her story with me. And when I knew that she was gay, well, she doesn't call herself gay. She says she fell in love with a woman.
yeah.
But but when I knew she was open to that, that was when I actually did the chasing. So
Oh, okay. Okay, that's it. That's really interesting. I think it's really fascinating because I think you're quite right about the labels, because you were obviously in love with your husband at one point, uh,
yes,
and then you fell in love with Tracy. So do you think that it's not necessarily even about being gay or straight, it's just about the person?
um, it is just a person. Sorry, I hope you won't hear the dogs. But I do call myself gay because I
Okay.
don't think I would go back to a man should anything happen to Tracy. For me, it's just it. This is home. This just is who I am. Whereas for her, it's completely different. For her, it is the person, whether it's male or female. It's the person she fell in love with.
And I think that's a really important distinction to make, isn't it? Because it's very individual for everybody.
It
Everybody
is.
has, yeah,
It
their
is.
own
And I
unique.
think, I mean, in today's times, it's got even more complex because you've got the whole non-binary and transgender, and I can't even begin to say I understand all of that. I don't. I'm open to listen and to learn, but it's just got so much more complex today than it was 15 years ago.
And I think it is really, it's sometimes the more options you have, the more complicated it becomes, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
And it must be really difficult for young people now, I think, to sort of to wade through all that. But maybe they're just born into it and they find it easier than those of us trying to catch up with everything, all of the changes that are happening. But so you met you 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 knew pretty quickly that you wanted to be with Tracy. But there was
Yeah.
obviously, then you said it was a month, so there must have been a month which was, because even if you're questioning, I would imagine, even if you're questioning things, and that's a big step away from actually doing something about it, which is much more terrifying and uprooting your life and changing your whole life. But there was obviously a period of time where you were kind of living a life where you then knew that you had to do that, and that was
Big
going to come. So how did that feel? Because was that the hardest time when you were seeing Tracy, but you were sort of still living this lie?
Absolutely. Deception is it's very debilitating. It ah yeah, living a lie is the worst thing you can do. I'm so relieved it was such a short space of time. Uh, it was the biggest relief to then, when my ex actually confronted me and I could tell the truth. So I would say that was the most difficult. So the build up to that, I think meeting Tracy was a catalyst. I was ready to leave my ex and to even leave the whole church lifestyle and everything. I was questioning so much. I was really struggling. I wasn't sure who I was. I wasn't sure if I believed in God anymore. Um, so that was all a struggle. But the deception was worse than that. And once that everything came out in the open, um, actually the rest wasn't so difficult for me. Everyone said you're so brave, this and that, but it was such a relief. That wasn't the difficult part. It was tough because you can imagine in that whole church community there was a lot of judgment and what have you. So that was tough, but still the deception was definitely the most difficult.
Because you
That
must
was
have
the
had
worst part.
that feeling in the pit of your stomach all the time,
Yes, and
that you're going to be found out, or or even having to pretend when you don't
I
want to
think
be there anymore.
it was the pretending because, first of all, I was battling to find my identity. Now, suddenly I'd found it, but now I was lying about it,
Mm,
so that was even worse.
mm.
So once everything was out in the open, that was actually when life began, you
Yeah,
know,
that's
even through the challenges.
that's amazing. So your husband obviously had some suspicions that
Yeah, I don't think I'm a very good liar. So,
okay. Well, when you haven't
so
needed to do it before, you don't hone those skills, do you?
yeah, just as well. Yeah, so I think he knew almost immediately. Yeah. He knew something was up. He didn't dream it was a woman, but he knew
Okay.
something was up.
Yeah. And so that must have been very difficult and painful. And as a mother as well, you must have just been really concerned about your daughters and how it would affect
Yeah,
them.
their whole life they knew nothing else but the church. They grew up in the church, and I'm not anti the church today. I've now found my own sort of spiritual path, and we all need a spiritual path of some sort. But I do feel we were sort of brainwashed. We were in a very contemporary, upmarket type church, and I do feel we allowed ourselves to be. I'm not blaming them, um, but I do feel that there was a slight brainwashing, and now my girls had gone through that, And so suddenly I didn't just betray their father, but I betrayed all of our faith, and I don't think I know, they took huge strain. It took nearly a year for our relationship to start mending.
Yeah. And that must have been really tough. That must
It
have been
was
really tough
very,
on you as a mum.
it was really difficult. It was very hurtful. And I knew that it was all my own fault. But when I'd come to this point now of finding myself, that's how precious it was. And even, now what the girls say to me is that it taught them they then had to examine their faith, their sexuality, their everything. And it taught them to have to find their path in life, and find authenticity. I think that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
So,
because that's alignment as well, isn't it? That's
hmm,
alignment with who you really are. And if you're out of alignment, you're at disease within yourself. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So once they'd worked through the betrayal, then they could start everything else. And I mean, everything's great today, and they love Tracy. They call her Mama T. But
Oh.
but they're still working through some of their own issues because they felt extremely betrayed, very hurt, not only by me but by the church community at that stage as well, um, and
So
even
yeah,
some
so
of the
how did
friends.
people treat you? Because, it's like you said, it's one thing going from a church in a big city where people may be a bit more accepting, and it's a broader church, if you like, to going to a small town church and being in a very tight-knit community and that happening there. I mean, what was the fallout like? Did people stand by you? Did they shun you? I mean, what happened?
No, so there were a few that tried to stand by me, but I found that they just actually didn't know how to treat me. I was like a pariah. Some of them were just downright mean. Um, so I ended up moving. I moved back to Johannesburg, which helped. But our church was part of a huge church group, so it didn't. So I still kept bumping into people from that big church group, um, and I found that it was really difficult. But the easiest thing to do was to speak about the elephant in the room immediately. So I would say to them, "Oh, I've left my ex, and I'm with a woman now." And they would either just about die and leave me as fast as they could, or they would say, "Oh, really? And how did that happen?" And they'd want to know a bit more about it. That's that's basically how I was treated. But I don't have one of those friends left, not one, which is very sad.
Because
After the book came out, a few of them uh, contacted me, and we sort of closed the circle, but we never pursued the friendship.
it is with if you're so involved in a community like that, that's all your relationships, isn't it? It's your family, it's your friends, your support
Yeah,
network, everything is within that community. And if that community has a very fixed ideology which doesn't sit well with your lifestyle, if you like, it's
yeah.
it's you. I suppose you're not going to be friends with those people, are you? Because it's just too different.
Yeah, it's almost like we've agreed to disagree.
Yeah.
They have a very fundamentalist point of view, and so there isn't a meeting ground anymore. And also they feel betrayed by me, um, and I feel like, well, you need to sort of change a bit. But let me just also say that this isn't all churches. I've I've since
Exactly.
come across other people in ministry and whatever that are very affirming and completely different to that. So even in this community we're in now, where there's a very traditional Afrikaans church, uh, the reverend, or I'm not sure what they call him, in Afrikaans it's the dominee, and he's a very gracious man. His own son is gay, and
Oh,
he's read my book, and he's delightful. So I've since learned as well. I'm not judging church, you know. Each
has
church is
has that
completely
restored your
different.
faith? Has that restored your faith a
Um,
bit?
yeah, so my faith now is completely different. I'm not so dogmatic. I think there's many roads to a higher power. So I'm much more open to. I don't like dogma. I don't like that. I don't think I like religion, where it's it's categorical. I'm much more into a more, I suppose, almost new agey, but more spirituality than tradition and religion. There's
Well,
definitely
if you're a
something.
rebel, it doesn't suit you, does it? You know,
Exactly.
the dogma doesn't suit you if you're a rebel.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's such a good point. And I also think if you're somebody that claims to be religious and following the teachings of Christ or whichever religion it is very sad when you can't find compassion in your heart. That the dogma and the rules
Yeah.
override,
Exactly.
and the conformity, I think it's the conformity, overrides your compassion and empathy for another human being. And I think
Yeah. It's.
there's a misalignment with that somewhere.
I agree. It's the man-made stuff,
Yeah, I agree.
more than the the spiritual meaning.
Yeah, yeah. So that's so fascinating. So moving forward now, you're 15 years on from this. You wrote a book, Coming Out, Coming Home. I love that title because just coming home is just so important for all of us. And for you, it was through coming out. Uh, can you just tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book and how it's done and your life since then?
Yeah, I think I've always, on my bucket list, I've always wanted to write a book. I always thought it was going to be a novel or a fiction story. But I, when all of this happened and there was all this turmoil inside, I thought, and no, it wasn't during lockdown. It was before lockdown. I started writing, and I started writing, yes, to write the book, but also to make sense of everything that had happened and what was still inside me. And it was really something that was a therapeutic process for me. And so I probably spent a good year. I didn't do it quickly, I did it over time. And I wrote the book, and then I thought, yeah, here's my book. And then I started sending it off to publishers and got all the rejections. And then I met a South African publisher and author. She's written a few memoirs. She's Her name's Melinda Ferguson. She's quite shocking in her story. Her story itself is shocking, but she chooses stories that do shock. And so she was offering a memoir course, and it was all online, and I did it. And she completely ripped my manuscript to pieces, but then she helped me to piece it back together again. And yeah, so that's really where the book was rebirthed. And after that, she didn't publish it. I don't think it was shocking enough for her. And so that was when I started the self-publishing journey. And that's what happened during lockdown, in fact. And I was stuck at home, and I managed through social media to spread the news about the book. And so I actually pre-sold it, which then gave me the finances to get the book printed. And then we had like a soft launch, where it was when lockdown was not so strict anymore, and we met in this outdoor restaurant place, and we just had it open all day so people could come and go. So there weren't too many people there at one time, and so all the people who had pre-bought the book arrived that day, and we basically
Oh.
had a big celebration, and it was wonderful.
So you've had really positive feedback, haven't you, from other people about the book? And do you feel like that's helped you to find a new community, a whole new community, a way, that supports you now and supports structure through doing that? Has it
Yeah, I did.
connected you with other people you might not necessarily have
Oh,
come into
very
contact with?
definitely. So initially, it was obviously a lot of our own friends and family and people who knew of us that bought the book. But since then, because it's available on Amazon, um, I've had quite a few interesting meetings or even just online meetings with women who've gone through similar experiences, who've got hold of me. And that's actually one of my favorite things about the book is meeting people who it just helped them in one way or another. Sometimes in the smallest little way. Sometimes just to know there's other people like that, and that's been my best part of the book. Um, people who've also struggled, and now they've felt okay. I can also come out. I'm not the only one. There are other people like this. Because it's amazing. There's so many women, older
Yeah.
women, who suddenly discover that they have feelings for another woman after years of, whether they've been with a man or not, but just later in life discover actually I'm attracted to another woman.
Because
So
maybe that's the first time they've taken time to even think about what it is they want. you know?
possibly, yeah, because our lives are so busy before that looking after everybody else. So now
Yeah.
suddenly you've got time to look at me.
Yeah. So if somebody's listening to this now and maybe they're in the same situation that you were in 15 years ago, or they're just starting to think about it, have you got any words of advice you'd give?
Sure. Every situation is so individual and is so different. And I think my my biggest words of advice would be to be true to yourself. What is it that you want? What are your authentic desires? And really, it is worth following those. And my daughters are, uh, our relationship is better now because there's this thing we've gone through. And I think just that, I think it's the authenticity that rings, and that has helped them with their lives. And so, yeah, be true to yourself. That's what I would say, and follow the path that brings you to that truth. And I remember from the church days, the Bible says the truth will set you free. And I always used to struggle with that because I never used to feel free. And then I found my truth, and it has set me free.
Well, I absolutely love that. Um, it's been so lovely to chat to you again. What's next for you? What's next? You had the book come out. I know that you've had an amazing move, haven't you?
Absolutely. We've moved from the crazy city of Johannesburg to a very small rural town and living in nature amongst a whole bunch of farms, and we're absolutely loving it. We're learning all about slow living, still busy because we still have to earn money, but learning to be mindful in the process. And this place has been a big adventure for us because we arrived here with no capital. No capital. We did have a piece of land that we had purchased previously, but now we had no money to build on the land. And so it's been this wonderful journey of how we've now got a home that we absolutely love. It's very simple, but it's absolutely perfect for us. It's been a journey of manifesting, and it's it's another form of home. So the next project is to write the book of this journey, which will be called I'm Home.
Oh, I can't wait to read it. I think that would be amazing. You don't like to make things easy for yourself, is what I would say. After all that, you then went on another great big journey and a struggle. But it's like you say, that struggle that you went through makes you probably appreciate what you've got even more. and
Absolutely.
and the
Yeah.
life that you've created for
Yeah.
yourself, which is really wonderful. I so enjoyed chatting to you again, Karen. You're such an inspiration, you really are. And for anybody that's listening who maybe wants to find out more about what you do and your story, where can they find you?
I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. It's, I think if you just, on TikTok, it's Karen Petersen SA. On Instagram, it's Karen Petersen ZA. And I can't remember what it is on Facebook. I think it's just my name, Karen Petersen.
Okay,
Um,
that's absolutely brilliant. What we'll do is we'll put some links in the show notes as well so that people can find out more about where you are, what you're up to, and follow your adventures, of which I'm sure there will be many more. Thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck with everything that you're doing in the future.
Thank you, Shirley. It's been an absolute delight.
And thanks everyone for listening as well. If you want to find out more about the work, the amazing work that the PHA does as well, please do check out the website, which is the-pha.org. Find out that you've got some great therapists on there. You've got the directory on there. You've got resources on there. You've got community groups, all sorts of wonderful things. So please do go and check that out. I look forward to catching up with you again soon. In the meantime, do take care. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.